The book.
Yeah.
First, take me to Jordan as you're writing the thing.
So I'm sitting at this hotel in Jordan, and they had left because my family's always with me when I'm working. They had left, and I was like, this is the time that I have to write. I probably wrote 60,000 words in that 2 weeks, maybe 50 or 60. You know, it was a lot. Just get up in the morning. If I wasn't working, walking around in the dunes or whatever, Wadi Rum, I would just sit there and it was just all pouring out.
By the way, I loved the stories in the book, including...
You're one of the few people that have read the book, by the way.
How about, though, one of the most outrageous stories that you decided to exclude?
I didn't take anything out of the book worried about what might be perceived of me or legal reasons.
And I loved how
I was approached legally by a couple of things.
Were you?
I was. Just people I mentioned and all that. And I tried to make the book not sensationalizing certain people, like, oh, I knew this person. Like, hey, I had a life. I really wanted to be an actor. Everybody knew it when I was 4 years old. And then I had a tough time for a little while. And then I became an actor. And then I met famous people. And I love my life. That's not what the book is.
Right.
The book is trying not to sensationalize people and say, look, this is human messiness, and this is my version of it. And I happened to meet some people along the way.
I liked how you opened the book, too.
How?
Well, the masturbation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
they talked about taking that out.
Oh, really? Okay.
They talked about rewriting it in a way that wasn't as crude.
I don't know if this is going to upset you. Your dad asked last night for one something
from the book? Really?
And I'm like, well, it's like appropriate or inappropriate? He's like, oh, I don't care. So I shared the masturbation.
Did you? Good.
And he's like laughing hysterically. He's like, that's my Josh.
That's it.
So you called people reading this memoir the most stressful, confusing time imaginable. Why?
It's me, man. It's me. This was written by me, which I found out later. They're like, you know what's a major plus for us is that you wrote this. And I was like, what does that mean? And they were like, most people don't write their own memoirs. I go, what? I had no idea. Ghostwriters and this and that. Tell your story and have somebody else write it. I can't imagine. It's my vernacular. You know, so in doing that, like when I did the audio recently, I can speak the English language fairly well. I'm good in front of a crowd, and I've learned that, you know, because I was a decent writer. I had people like the Coens asking me to read speeches or write speeches, and that kind of grew and grew and grew. So I'm fairly comfortable with doing that. And then I do the audible, which people have told me through and through is pretty difficult. And I was like, I don't think this one's going to be difficult for me. Literally hell.
Why?
Bro, I don't know. It was like, it was either my brain got tired or I wasn't sleeping enough or whatever it was. But I tripped through that, you know, there were times, there were days, there were hours in that days where the English language was so elusive to me that I was like, I don't know what happened. So during that process, I was literally wishing that it didn't exist. I was saying, I wish I'd never written this book. I should have never done this. Why am I doing this? I'm going to be found out now. I'm a total fraud. You know, what is this whole idea like being a writer, and why is that so important to me, and why has it been so important to me, and why can't I just read and be happy? You got to write anything.
You said once about yourself, when you were growing up, you were positive something in you was broken.
Yeah.
Explain that.
You know, when you try and be, you know, there's an expectation, I think, that parents or otherwise teachers put on you, and it's having to live to a certain standard. Are you a kid that's going to be successful? Are you a kid that's going to be this? And everything that I manifested was against that. Now, whether it was on purpose or not, who knows? Or whether I was just innately dim, let's say. And then you have a teacher like Mr. Visser in Santa Barbara High, 9th grade, that came up and said, grammatically, I don't know what the you're doing, but you're a good writer, just keep writing. And it's that idea of you're paying attention enough to actually see something in somebody that they may not even see in themselves. And I'll give you a good example. Later in life, which I get, it's like it emotionally impacts me. And that's, I didn't want to use my acting agent as my literary agent. I found that just, I don't want to be surrounded by yes people. You know what I mean? And I've been lucky enough to find people in my life that tell me the truth, which I appreciate. I might not like all the time, but I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So I went out and I kind of wrote, I went in the desert and wrote 40 or 50 pages that were really and I gave them to my agent, my acting agent, and the literary part of CAA. And then I went out and I started giving it to other people. And there's this girl, Kimberly Witherspoon, whose first client was Anthony Bourdain when she was 20 years ago or whatever. And she runs Inkwell Management. And she was like, I like what you do. You can do better, but I like what you do, which I appreciated. She said, I'll take you on. And she took me on and I wrote, and then bang, she'd read a couple of versions, and I did something during the process where I did a part 1, a part 2, and a part 3. So I finished it. Maybe it was 80,000 words at this point. I gave it to Kim. Kim called me and she said, part 1 is the best writing you've done yet. It's great, flows really well, very well written, da-da-da. What happened with part 2? And she was like, yeah, go back and rewrite the whole thing. I was like, wow. People paying attention, me paying attention, means it's the biggest thing for me. People who listen but don't really listen, that irks me. What's the point? What's the point in the conversation if you're not going to listen?
Or people that tell you what they think you want to hear versus what you need to hear.
No thanks.
You said happiness that lasts too long in people always scares you. Why?
That's a quote in the book. Happiness is not a goal to me. Solace is a goal. Contentment is a goal. Happiness is not a goal. There's a lot of, I'm thinking of somebody in particular, but the perpetual smile, which I think I also mentioned, it's always scared me a little bit. There's something about this idea, which is the whole kind of point of the book, is to destroy this concept that we've leaned on, especially contemporarily, of celebrityism. And you go, the perception of celebrity is walking down a perpetual red carpet waving. That's what you spend your life doing. But for real? No, of course not. So what's for real? How messy is it? How stressful is it? Why is it stressful? Do we put ourselves in that because we find the value in that, or do we find the value in the work? Or does it lend to a better life? Or all that's been interesting to me, I think, because I grew up sort of in it. My dad was an actor. I watched him. I watched, him go from literally unknown to famous. Marcus Welby, the friends of its era. And the discomfort that came with that, or the stress that came with that. So it's always, there's been something in the back of my head where I'm like, And I'm sure that's why my friends who I grew up with would tell you, like, when I became an actor, everybody went, what? When did that happen?